Yes, there's some explosions going on at Wadsworth, and I'm not sure what it is. It's
Wadsworth and what?
Between Chatfield and Pen Carl, and it's on the east side of Wadsworth. There's been 2 explosions.
Okay. What's your address?
My address is 7960 West Fairview. I live on the back, and I can see the explosion. There was a bolt of fire going up in the air.
Okay, and your phone number there's 933-9985?
Yes, correct.
And your name?
This is Lynn Jackson. I can see it from the past, and there's been 2 explosions. In the second one, there was a bolt of fire going in the air.
Okay, we'll get somebody started out there to check the area.
And there's a car there trying to see what's going on, and there's a lot of smoke.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
In the morning of April 20th, 1999, television and radio audiences around the world were met with media reports of a shooting at a Colorado high school named Columbine. Authorities fronted by the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office soon told us that the school, located in unincorporated Jefferson County, had come under an attack involving a variety of guns, improvised explosive devices, and knives, claiming 15 lives between 11:20 and 12:08. In the hours following the school's evacuation, the Western corporate media ran interviews with students and teachers who had witnessed the attack, in which reporters probed them for emotional reactions. Many of these witnesses reported attackers not matching the descriptions of Eric Harris or Dylan Klebold, 2 Columbine seniors announced as the sole planners and perpetrators of the attack. Their reports also mentioned attackers appearing in groups of 3 or more, and in places where Harris and Klebold never were. Independent journalists picked up on these and other incongruities in the information coming out of the Littleton area and posted them on the websites of 1999. The Jefferson County Sheriff's Office, amid pressure over the long delay in publishing their investigation's findings, released a report in May 2000, including over 11,000 pages of lead sheets, ballistics and eyewitness reports, and other attack-related media. The length of these reports did not lend them to rapid digestion, and the 9/11 attacks and overall shift in the American political climate of 2001 obscured many of the pressing domestic troubles facing America. Perhaps the dust of the Twin Towers has settled enough by now for the people of the world to take a fresh look at the attack launched on Columbine.
All right, got the shooter. He's up on the top of our...
They've got the shooter?
They've got the shooter cornered.
He's cornered.
Football field behind the shed on the back half of our school.
So he's at the back half of the school?
Yeah, he's in the back of the school up on the football field by the shed.
Kathy?
The police can come in and get
He's at the back of the school?
Clement Park.
The shooter? Behind, on the football field, behind the shed. They've got him cornered. Is that, my deputies have him cornered?
Hold on just a minute. Do we have the shooter cornered, you guys?
Behind the shed.
Peter, this is Sid. Where's the shooter? Now they said he's gone to the library. He's in the building.
By 11:30, Harris and Klebold had officially thrown pipe bombs into the school's parking lot, shot and killed Rachel Scott and Daniel Rorbo, exchanged gunfire with law enforcement authorities, wounded several students and teachers, and moved inside the school through the cafeteria. Once there, they allegedly shot Dave Sanders, who later died in a classroom awaiting medical aid that never arrived. Harris and Klebold were then said to have moved to the library, where by 11:45 they had allegedly killed 10 more students, moved through the science room areas, and back downstairs into the cafeteria, where they allegedly spent about 15 minutes attempting to detonate explosives. By 12 o'clock, Harris and Klebold had allegedly begun making their way back upstairs, where they allegedly killed themselves by 12:08 in the library. After the smoke had cleared, SWAT teams entered the building.
Here's the latest on the DOAs.
No, go ahead.
18 to 25 in the school.
18 to 25, and it looks like the 2 suspects are dead too, right?
Correct, yeah. But SWAT came out from their initial and said their initial count was anywhere from 18 to 25.
Okay.
So that's just a guesstimate. That doesn't include anybody that went to the hospital.
Their figures on the dead were echoed in the media by Sheriff John Stone, who, along with Sheriff's Deputy Steve Davis, did most of the talking on the part of Jefferson County. Stone added to the Denver Post that 17 of these deaths had been confirmed. A student at the time of the attack named Jonathan Vandermark was quoted by the press as having said that when he was being evacuated, he passed 3 bodies in a stairwell as he and other students were rescued from the biology lab. They still had their backpacks on, he told the Rocky Mountain News. And in a Denver Post article titled, "Daughter Retreats Behind Stony Wall of Pain," then CHS student Brandy Wiseman told that she crouched low, then ducked into a 10 by 10 foot storage room off the cafeteria. At 2:30 p.m., a SWAT team member arrived outside the door. Brandy ran to the teacher's lounge, and while running to safety, she saw 3 bodies, one still oozing blood. That's when she thought, "My God, there's 3 dead kids laying at our school."
3 different times you could see on news tape, if you repeated it, that somebody from an ambulance dragged a body out of the school. It couldn't have been one of the killing students because they didn't have their long black tapes on.
Okay.
And you can't even imagine that it could be they were dragging a dead teacher or a dead student out, but they were dragging this body out down the steps and across the grass by the body's feet.
Okay.
Now that's desecration of a corpse for one thing. It's interfering with a crime scene for another. It wasn't like they were trying to remove, or the coroner was trying to remove a dead body, or an ambulance was trying to remove an injured person. This obviously was a dead body.
Ma'am, we don't know that. And the police were on scene when that happened.
Well, okay, let's assume there was a dead body, because I can't imagine that they would be dragging this man by his feet.
All of the dead were officially left in the school to be taken to the coroner on the 21st. Among them were the alleged planners and perpetrators, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. This photograph, taken in the building's library, shows both of them lying on the floor with gunshot wounds. This copy has been censored, but the uncensored version is available on the internet. Klebold's injury indicates that a bullet went through his skull from the left to the right in this photo. The gun he was holding is difficult to hold to one's own head and was found next to his right arm. Originally, investigators reviewing this evidence came up with the hypothesis that Harris's and Klebold's deaths were a murder-suicide. This was overruled, and a double suicide theory rests as the official story. The photo shows that bits of Klebold's brain and skull had been ejected onto Harris's left pant leg. Likewise, Harris's wound appears to have resulted in a trajectory of blood onto the lowest shelf of the bookcase immediately behind his head. This would appear to indicate that Harris and Klebold were lying in this exact position at the time of the shots having been fired. Officially, the time of their deaths was set between 12:05 and 12:08 p.m. by government sharpshooters looking in the windows of the library. No one inside the school, in or near the library, reported hearing or seeing Harris and Klebold kill themselves, but sounds of explosions and gunfire were heard well after this time. Patty Nielsen, a Columbine art teacher, was in the library at 11:30 a.m. just after the shooting is alleged to have begun. She was wounded and described in an interview with government investigators on page 76 of the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office documents that after the attackers had left the library for the Commons area, she went into a room behind the main one, crawled into a cupboard, and stayed there for the next 3 hours. She looked at her watch and it was 11:45 when she went in. After she was in the cupboard for a long time, she heard someone in the room. As they walked by, she saw a purple dress. She opened the door and saw 2 women whom she identified as Lois Keene and Carol Weld. At around 1 o'clock, Lois and Carol left the room. Nielsen stayed in the room in the cupboard. Within minutes of Lois and Carol leaving, there was some more gunfire. The gunfire was very close. She described it as being a small, short burst. Nielsen believed the shooters had found Lois and Carol and shot them. Later, after it was all over, Lois and Carol told Nielsen they thought the shooters found Nielsen and shot her. About 2 hours after this burst of gunfire, the cupboard opened and it was Lois. SWAT was in the hallway, and they were told that the suspects had not been apprehended yet. Keene told investigators writing on page 453 that it was sometime between 1 o'clock and 1:30 when she and Weld went back into the RNN, Columbine's audiovisual department, sound booth. She stated that 5 minutes after getting back into the booth they heard more shooting. She stated it was a round of shots, definitely more than 2, and had an automatic sound to it. Weld reported on 6:03 that after she and Keene returned to the sound booth, they heard some gunfire. Weld assumed it was coming from the library. She stated it was a good hour before she looked at her watch. Keene asked what time it was. Weld realized that she had a light on her watch and looked at it. The time was 3 o'clock. The attackers are alleged to have used pump-action and semi-automatic weapons, meaning that, at the maximum, 1 shot is fired for each pull of the trigger, and not automatic guns, which fire multiple shots in rapid succession as long as the trigger is pulled. Although, in addition to citing an improvised explosive device total of 99, including bombs placed in the parking lot and found at attackers' homes, the JCSO report claimed that a total of 339 shots had been fired, 141 by law enforcement authorities and 188 by the attackers. Even mainstream media indicated 900 shots, while independent counts of the ballistics evidence have yielded numbers closer to 1,000. Overseeing the investigation for the FBI was Supervisory Agent Dwayne Fusilier. One of Fusilier's sons, Scott, had attended Columbine and had produced video projects for school involving partial simulations of the attack. These were made in 1997, and the production team involved members and quasi-members of the trenchcoat group Harris and Klebold were allegedly affiliated with. The FBI stated that they had full confidence in Fusilier, who had previously been a key figure in the apprehension of the Montana Freemen, and that there was no conflict of interest in his heading of the investigation.
Did anyone here in your group see the shooter?
I did. We did. We heard 3 gunshots, and I said it was gunshots, and Heather was like, no, it wasn't, and then she got up, and then I got up, and we walked over there. We saw 3 guys with guns. We saw a really tall guy in a black trench coat.
In the library photo, Eric Harris had on a white t-shirt, normally fitting black pants with lots of pockets down the legs, and black boots. According to eyewitnesses, he also wore a trench coat at the beginning of the attack. Harris was known to have had light brown, closely cut hair, and to have stood approximately 5 foot 10 inches in height. He was of thin build and was described by eyewitnesses as a shooter throughout the reports. Pictured in the same image, Dylan Klebold, shown on the right, wore normally fitting black pants and black boots also, with a black t-shirt and black baseball hat turned backwards. He was also described as having worn a black trench coat earlier in the day, stood approximately 6 foot 3 inches tall, was of average build, had brownish red hair several inches long, and was named by many eyewitnesses. On May 6, 1999, then CHS student Ashley Eglund gave the following statement. I, Ashley Eglund, recognized Eric Harris and, redacted, in the hall, while I was by the gymnasium, shooting at me and other people. In the government reports, wherever a witness identifies someone besides Harris or Klebold by name as having been an attacker, the name has been redacted in accordance with state of Colorado law. In a few places, however, a name which was required to have been redacted has been left visible. After Eglund described the redacted name shooter as having been a white male, about 5 foot 8 inches tall, described as the same size as me, Ashley, with a scrawny body and glasses, reading glasses, nondescript and not sunglasses, and dark brown hair below the ears and curled at the back, the redacted name appears several more times in the text that follows. On a following page of the report, a map of the school grounds is shown bearing captions indicating the positions of people and places relevant to Ashley's testimony. Caption number 1, which refers to the place where Ashley saw the shooters, is labeled Harris, Morris. In her report, Ashley described this person as shooting at her and other people about the same number of times as Eric Harris. This is a photo of CHS Class of '99 Chris Morris, a friend of Eric Harris, being taken into police custody on the afternoon of the attack. After initially identifying Eric Harris as the attacker he saw, Brian Fry, who did not know Eric Harris or Dylan Klebold, told investigators reporting on page 813 that when he received his yearbook, he looked at the picture of Redacted and became convinced that the person he saw standing outside the student entrance holding and then shooting the Tech-9 was Redacted, not Eric Harris. He said he had assumed the shooter was Eric Harris because he did not recognize him as Dylan Klebold that day, and the media had announced the shooters as Eric and Dylan. He advised the shooter took very long strides and was close enough to him, he estimates about 15 feet, that he saw the acne on his face. Then student Bijan Monty was sitting on the grass outside the school during lunch and saw an individual with a gun whom she told Colorado Bureau of Investigation agents Jerry W. Means and Ricky S. Mundine was not one of the guys identified on television. Monty saw 3 students go down to the ground and a guy in the trench coat standing over 2 of the downed kids. She stated she knew it was Redacted in the trench coat because she recognized him. The individual whom Monty saw had on a black trench coat that extended to between his knees and his ankles. He had on a black baseball hat in the backward position. His face was long and his neck was long. He had a narrow chin. His teeth were crooked and he had an obvious overbite. He had no glasses or facial hair. His complexion had lots of acne. There were indentations like pieces were cut out, and his face was white in color with some redness. He had black, tighter-fitting jeans, not baggy. They were regular black jeans. There were no straps or pockets extending down the legs. He had black high-top tennis shoes with no colored markings. She stated they were not boots because the toes and overall shape was a tennis shoe. Monty later added that the coat the attacker was wearing was folded back in the front and it was not leather. She stated it was made of a cloth material, but it was not denim. Monty, who was somewhat familiar with some of the Trenchcoat Mafia members, even was able to identify the shooter by name. Monty got a good look at the attacker as she watched Redacted for approximately 30 seconds. She stated when she first saw the gunman and the kids on the ground, she thought it was a joke. She might have thought this because the Tuesday of the shooting was Columbine's senior prank day, something which led not just Bijan, but many students to initially mistake the sounds of gunfire for a prank and even cheer them before realizing what was going on. The day was also Adolf Hitler's 110th birthday, the day after the anniversary of the 1993 Branch Davidian fire in Texas and the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing, as well as what might unofficially be called National Marijuana Day. Bijan was positive the man with the gun standing over the 2 kids was Redacted. She stated she could recognize Redacted and that is whom she saw. She stated she could see his complexion was rough with acne and she could see his messed up teeth and overbite from where she was standing. Monty was asked if there was any doubt in her mind whom she saw. Monty stated there was no doubt, it was Redacted. Investigator P.J. Doyle wrote on page 4083 that then student Caitlin Place saw a person coming down the stairs on the outside. He was shooting a rifle. He was tall and he had a long-shaped face. He was wearing a trench coat. Kate said, "It was Redacted. I'm almost positive of it. I remember looking him dead in the eye. He was in my debate class for a little bit, either the end of the last semester or the beginning of this one." She then stated that she recognized him as Redacted. Kate said that Dylan kind of looks like Redacted, but Dylan doesn't have the long face. Redacted teeth are messed up, and he was smiling, and I saw his teeth then. Kate said that she has since seen pictures of Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, and she said it's not one of them. On page 4465, we read that then student Lacey Smith opened her yearbook and pointed out Redacted picture. She stated that his appearance has changed from that picture, that now he has long hair and his face is really broken out. In addition to the long coat, Redacted is described as wearing a white t-shirt, black jeans, black leather shoes like Reeboks, and that he has big feet. Smith recalled that about 3 days prior to the incident, she and Redacted bumped into each other in the hall, and he stepped on her foot and they both fell down. She said he was wearing a long trench coat, but described it as not too long on him because he's so tall. She said she has some difficulty making things out at a distance, but that she did not have any trouble identifying Perry when he walked past her. The officer asked Smith how sure she was that the person she saw and spoke with was Redacted. Her response was 100% sure. The officer then showed Smith a photo lineup which included a picture of Dylan Klebold and asked her if the person who walked past her was in the lineup. She said he was not in the lineup. Crystal Arculeta reported on page 2364 that at the beginning of the attack, she observed a male party wearing a trench coat, a black ball cap turned around backwards, very tall, that Crystal believed to be a student that she knew as a Redacted. Crystal observed the party in the trench coat throw one pipe bomb on the hill above the cafeteria. When asked by Detective Demmel how she knew it was Redacted, she said that Perry was pigeon-toed and that the person was walking that way, in a very distinct pigeon-toed manner. She thought he was wearing tennis shoes, but was not exactly sure about that. Then student Tessa Nelson told an Officer Brooks that she thinks the individual she saw with the gun might have been Redacted because she knew what Perry looks like and said that this individual looks very much like Redacted. Brooks asked Tessa if she had been close enough to this individual to pick him out of a photo lineup. Brooks then presented Tessa with an unmarked photo lineup which showed Redacted in photo number 3. Tessa looked at the lineup for about 5 seconds and picked photo 3. In the Associates section of the JCSO report, 22 individuals are interviewed by government investigators specifically for having been friends or otherwise closely connected with the trenchcoat group of which Harrison Klebold had been a part. Among them is a Robert Perry, a former class of '99 CHS student who had left the school that winter. Then CHS student Matthew Conley told that on the morning of April 20th, 1999, he saw a male party he knew as Robert Perry driving a small red car in the parking lot at nearby Clement Park. Matthew said that he saw the small red car stop and someone get out of the passenger side. Matthew said he had not seen Robert Perry for some time and believed he had dropped out of Columbine High. He said he remembers him due to the fact that he had bad acne. CHS graduate and trenchcoat member Joe Stair added in his report that Perry was an individual with buck teeth. And Bijan Monty had reported to government investigators that the trenchcoat worn by the individual with the acne and messed up teeth whom she saw was made of a cloth material but not denim. When questioned by police, Robert Perry told investigators writing on page 10,854 that he could not afford an expensive oil-skinned Australian duster, so he wore a cheaper, all-black cotton trench coat. And furthermore, that he was the only member of the TCM who wore an actual trench coat. The rest of the members wore an Australian duster. Jonathan Vandermark reported seeing 2 attackers in the hallway outside the science classrooms where he hid during the attack. One of them he recognized and identified by name as Dylan Klebold. The other he described as being about 1 foot shorter than Dylan, with dark hair that was spiked on top with blonde tips. That individual was wearing a white t-shirt and had on what appeared to be a dark green backpack. He was unable to see what type of pants were worn, but stated he also had a gun strapped around his neck that appeared to be similar to the one carried by Dylan. Vandermark stated he is not 100% sure the individual was Eric Harris. He could not recall seeing Harris around school prior to the incident and did not think the gunman resembled the photograph shown by the media. He then stated it was possible that the individual was Harris and he just looked older than the photos. Several other witnesses describe an individual of this type in the same place and with Klebold. Then student Aaron Walton said on page 2242 of the report, "I was in the science room, heard gunshots, thought it was a senior prank. We heard gunshots getting closer. We saw 2 guys standing in the doorway, backs to us, heard them fire 2 to 3 shots. Don't know where, possibly toward the science teacher's room, then they left. One of the guys was tall, black hair, wearing all black. The other one had short blonde hair, like he was going bald. He looked like he was in his late 30s. Then student David Eagle said on page 1781 that he was sitting behind one of the turned-over desks in the science room. He could see out the window in the door. Through it, he saw the killers. He said that one was holding a sawed-off shotgun. Eagle described this person holding the gun as someone with black shaved hair with blonde streaks. The hair was longer on the top than it was on the bottom. Eagle said that the person he saw did not look like the people, Harrison Klebold, he seen on television. And then student Jennifer Small reported on page 2183 that after a science teacher instructed her to take cover, she saw a senior standing outside her classroom door. She knew he was the shooter. Then she saw an adult, blonde, short, spiky hair, thought he was in 30s. She thought he was a cop until he held up a sawed-off shotgun. Then he and the senior tried to break into the room where a shot teacher went. In the JCSO report supplement, page 6, Small further added that the individual she saw was wearing a white t-shirt and described as buffed with a chiseled face. An investigator interviewing Small wrote the following. Around 12:15 p.m., Miss Small heard gunfire outside the science room. She looked out from behind the table and witnessed a white male, tall, over 6 feet, with a hat on backwards, short-sleeved shirt, unknown color. She immediately recognized him as a senior in the school who was part of the Trenchcoat Mafia. She later identified him as Dylan Klebold. She estimated she was about 20 feet away from him. Ms. Small stated at this time a second male came into her view from her same location. I asked Ms. Small if she recognized the second male she saw in the hallway. She stated she did not, but was very sure it was not Eric Harris. I asked her if she knew Eric Harris. She stated she knew who he was because she would occasionally see Eric in the smoker's pit at school. In fact, on April 20th, 1999, around 11:10 a.m., she saw Eric Harris in the smoker's pit. She recalled making a comment that it had not been a good day for her so far, and Eric Harris responded with, "Not to mention it's Hitler's birthday." Small got such a good look at the man she saw outside the science room that she was able to put forth a sketch of his face. The investigator's report on Jennifer goes on to say that immediately after leaving the smoker's pit, she, Jennifer, was walking toward the administration area near the telephones. She noticed a tall, 6-foot, white male, short brown hair, wearing a dark trench coat with a dark shirt and camo pants. He was carrying a duffel bag walking towards her in the hallway. He had come inside the building through the doors by the administration and was walking into the school. She noticed the duffel bag more than anything because it was large and appeared heavy. Miss Small estimated she was 7 to 8 feet away from him as he walked past her. She was very sure he was not a student, but believed he was friends with Dylan Klebold and part of the TCM. She believed she could identify him. Ms. Small stated it was not unusual for former CHS students or other students to be inside the school visiting friends. Jennifer added in an additional report on page 2185 that the person in the fatigues was specifically wearing a black trench coat, black shirt, black and white camouflage pants, and he was carrying a black-colored duffel bag, and the bag appeared to be heavy by the way it was being carried upon his shoulder. On that page, she names the person she thinks it was by name. The name has been redacted, and authorities asked many witnesses if they had observed duffel bags in the building prior to the attack, which they believed to have been a main vehicle for the transportation of the pipe bombs and other improvised explosive devices brought in for the attack. Adam Foss, on page 4931, also described the person holding the shotgun as wearing camouflage pants and high black boots. And on page 4691, it's reported that at approximately 11:15 a.m., immediately after then-student Patrick Vassar sat down with his lunch, he saw 4 or 5 individuals in black walking away from the school. Everyone in the group was wearing trench coats, except one who was wearing camouflaged pants. About midway through the early part of the attack, 3 young men, one of whom was a former student at Columbine, were arrested in a field near the building. They were said to be members of a culture known as splatterpunk, a variation of punk culture whose adherents are especially interested in morbidity and violence. All three of them wore camouflage pants at the time of their detainment, but none of them are of the black and white variety. According to statements made by John Stone, these individuals, Matthew Christensen, Matt Acard, and Jim Brunetti, told police that they were curious about the shooting after hearing about it on the radio and decided to sneak up on the school through a nearby field to have a look. Stone responded that the attack was not being reported on the radio at that time. All of what exactly was exchanged between police and the three remains uncertain, but they were released. At the minimum, they were temporarily used as a diversion by a sheriff not wanting to explain who Chris Morris was or why he had been put into the back of a police car.
Sheriff, there was a suspect or someone in handcuffs taken down. It's not seen here. Can you tell us about that?
We had three individuals that were ascending upon the school wearing kind of military camouflage fatigue type things. They were detained, and it appears they are associates of these gentlemen or good friends of these gentlemen that I don't want to call them gentlemen, these people that perpetrated this atrocity here today.
We're talking about someone dressed in black who was taken away.
Yes,
Here.
yes.
Is that a suspect?
This is still under investigation. We're not sure what relationship he had to those people inside, but he was a very good friend according to the information.
According to FBI Special Agent Matthew S. Harris, writing on page 656, on the morning of the attack, then sophomore Jake Apodaca went to the cafeteria. Just prior to the 11:15 bell, while sitting at a table near the south window, he saw Dylan Klebold walk into the room through the southwest entrance. Klebold was dressed in all black, black boots, black trousers, black shirt, a black trench coat, and was wearing a backwards hat with a Boston Red Sox emblem. Apodaca and his friends walked out of the southwest exit of the cafeteria toward the soccer fields. He heard what sounded like a string of firecrackers going off and turned toward the school and saw two white males crouching along the northwest corner of the cafeteria. One person was dressed in a white short-sleeved t-shirt and blue jeans with no weapon visible. The other person was dressed in all black, black trousers, black shirt, black trench coat, a black beret, and was wearing what appeared to be a black mask. He did not recognize either of these individuals since one had on a mask and the person in the white t-shirt because he was crouched down with his back to him. Apodaca saw the person in the white t-shirt throw an object about the size of a soda can on top of the library. This object appeared metallic since it looked silver in the sunlight. 1 or 2 seconds after landing on the roof, it exploded with a loud boom, a flash of fire, and puff of smoke. Chris Wisher is another who saw this attacker. Wisher was recorded on page 1264 as having seen a white male, dressed in a white short-sleeved shirt and blue jeans, kneeling with his back to him near the northwest corner of the cafeteria. Wisher saw this person throw an object one-handed on top of the cafeteria library roof. It appeared metallic, and it exploded with a loud bang, a flash of fire, and a pall of smoke. While he observed the person in the black trench coat shooting outside and the person in the white t-shirt throwing the explosive device, he also heard very rapid gunfire coming from somewhere within the school. Donald Arnold, who had walked to the soccer field after eating his lunch, is recorded on page 666 as having looked toward the school and seen a short, pudgy male wearing a white t-shirt and throwing something onto the roof of the school near the electrical transformers. Arnold heard an explosion and saw dust on the roof soon after. Patrick Neville, who was also in the soccer field area, told a police investigator writing on page 1044 that he saw a white male with a white shirt, blue jeans, whom he observed throw something on the roof which exploded. Neville stated he knew it exploded because he could hear the noise and see the smoke coming from the roof. Then sophomore Mike Kenny told investigators writing on page 940 that he and the people he was with observed a party in a black trench coat with black pants. Mike stated that he was approximately 100 yards away. Mike reported that the guy had a Tech 9 in his hand. A person wearing a white t-shirt and blue jeans was about 10 feet behind the guy in the trench coat, and they both appeared to be together. Nathan Vanderau, recorded on page 4677 and then a Columbine Jr., was seated at a table along the west windows of the cafeteria. Vanderau saw two individuals outside of the school. One individual he saw only from the waist up was dressed in a white shirt and blue jeans. This person was throwing something in a sidearm motion up toward the school roof. Vanderau saw him throw one or two items. And in great detail, Jonathan Cole recounted to investigators writing on page 750 that he met up with Jake Apodaca and Chris Wisher when he noticed two males in trench coats. One was wearing a ski mask with one large hole in it. He recalled that one had brown, puffy hair. He recalled seeing a third male who was wearing a white t-shirt that had either short sleeves or no sleeves, blue jeans, exit the building behind the two trenched males. He next remembered that the male in the white shirt yelled at the other two males in trench coats to go, go.
And one of the kids reported he was on a soccer field and he saw a kid in a t-shirt with the two people that were in long jackets, and the kid was throwing a bomb or some type of a pipe device on the roof.
Detective Terry Demmel, assigned with the Columbine Law Enforcement Task Force, included the following in his report of a May 3, 1999 interview with Jason Brem on page 719. Jason reported that on Tuesday the 20th, he observed a party wearing a trench coat and black hat turned backwards, who was leaning against a green post that was anchoring a tree. Jason stated that the person was a little shorter than himself. Jason is 5'11" or 6 feet, and that he was wearing a black pair of boots. Detective Demmel showed Jason photographs of Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold at that time, with Jason reporting that the party he observed wearing the trench coat had a very round face and was neither Harris nor Klebold. Jason added that the party had a black nylon bag with straps at his feet. Jason described the bag as being approximately 1.5 to 2 feet long and appeared full. While playing soccer, Jason heard what he thought sounded like a string of firecrackers going off, and saw smoke coming up from next to the guy in the trench coat. He stated that the person in the trench coat was the same party that he had observed when he walked out of the door. Jason stated that the guy in the trench coat was alone. The party in the trench coat began shooting randomly as he walked down the stairs. The gunman then started shooting into windows of the library. The individual then lobbed several devices up onto the roof that caused explosions. He then ran back down the stairs to the bottom and fired off what Jason thinks was a shotgun that was louder than anything else that had been going off. According to an investigator named Vondenkamp, writing on page 4010 of the report, then-student Renee Pavalainen witnessed a lone white student running toward the inside stairs in the cafeteria about 5 to 7 feet away from her. The student was wearing a black jacket. The student had ear-length brown hair and no hat. She believed he was about 5'6" tall. Pavalainen told Agent Wright that she believed the student was firing a weapon while running. She believed this because the pop-pop noise became louder as the student ran by them towards the steps. In reference to her description of the acne-faced shooter, a government investigator asked Pigeon Monty if the person she had witnessed holding the gun was wearing tight pants or baggy ones. This question may have been asked to disambiguate the shooter from this one, described by Stephanie Duffy on page 2919. Duffy described the person in the cafeteria as a male, tall, about 6 feet, wearing baggy black pants, a red shirt, and a black trench coat. She did not recall seeing a hat. She stated that this person was holding what appeared to her to be a double-barreled shotgun. She stated there was nothing in particular about him that was distinctive. She stated that she has seen numerous pictures of Eric Harris since the incident and does not believe that this is who she saw that day. Lisa Forgan, one of the last students to exit the cafeteria, also saw an attacker wearing an orange shirt and speaking German, whom she did not believe was either suspect seen on TV or in the paper, but felt she may be able to identify him. and one gunman was reported as having been referred to as Joe by the attackers he was with. Then student Doreen Salazar reported to Denver police officer Robert Kraft on page 3761 that he did hear one suspect call the other one Joe, and Columbine student Courtney Harrival is reported by FBI Special Agent John M. Helvig as having heard who she thought was a gunman say, "Redacted, I have 3 of them in here." She's very positive that she heard the word redacted and not the word yo. Supporting Harrival's account is Colorado Bureau of Investigation agent Jerry W. Means' report of then student Alicia Insinius stating that she was in the cafeteria eating her lunch at approximately 11:20 a.m. when the shooting started. She stated everyone started screaming and she saw 3 people with guns coming into the cafeteria. Ms. Insinius stated that one of the gunmen had a long black coat and she did not recognize him. She stated the other 2 shooters were a current student and a student that had graduated last year. She did not know their names. Ms. Insinius stated as the gunmen were walking around the cafeteria and the stairway, she heard one of them say, "Redacted, where are you? I got 3 of them," this being the same exchange heard by Harrival. Insinius' statement was also recorded on a police lead sheet, indicating that Insinius had specifically heard the gunman say, "Joe, where are you? I got 3 of them." The reports of attackers not identified as either Harris or Klebold, and who, in some cases, are actually identified specifically as other individuals by name, go on, not all of them containing redaction slip-ups. Harris's and Klebold's official paths through the school take them from the parking lot, through the cafeteria, up the stairs, into the library, back down the stairs, back into the cafeteria, back up the stairs, back into the library, and to the coroner's office. At least 2 of the participants in the attack on Columbine were witnessed in none of these places. A photograph taken from outside the school shows someone on its roof at the time of the attack, and many eyewitnesses indicated likewise. Nathan Vanderouse said he sprinted to Clements Park, where a cop told him to keep going because there was a gunman on the roof. Penny Zare indicated to investigators on page 5212 that police had approached her and continued to tell her and other individuals to keep running away from the building as there may be a person with a gun on the school roof. Candace Cushman reported on page 2794, "When we got outside, I saw someone on the roof with what I thought was a black trench coat. He was aiming a gun, so Eric, Nick, and I ran toward the smoker's pit." And Michelle Fox said that upon exiting the doors, she began walking in a northwest direction on the gymnasium's north side, where she saw someone standing on the roof of the gymnasium along its north side, approximately 15 yards from its west side. Michelle said that this person on the roof was holding something that was long and appeared to be pointing it northward, as recorded on page 5196. Law enforcement authorities have stated that this person was alternately a repairman who got caught on the roof during the attack and clamped the door shut behind him, in contrast to the door actually having been wide open, or it was SWAT team members on the roof.
On top of your roof, there's 3 air handling units. The one on the left side, the air handling unit door is wide open. The gravel's all scuffed up. It looks like somebody had ran and jumped inside this unit. You may have somebody inside that unit.
Okay.
These units are never left
Where the white and yellow truck is?
Yes.
The 3 air handling units. And which one is it?
It's the one on the left front. But they've been, it's the only one up there with the door open. And I mean, we do this, with our company. We know about them. You never leave these doors open. And one is wide open.
Another shooter was seen outside the halls of Columbine that day in a nearby park called Weaver, located just up the road from CHS. 2 witnesses, Jake Apodaca and Chris Wisher, told investigators that they spotted a gunman in the bushes of the park, ducked down with a shotgun. Wisher later told classmates that his reports were blown off by the police.
information. I didn't know. What are the suspects? They're called the Black Pitch Cup Brigade. We already know that. Okay, are they former students at Columbine High School? We already know that. Okay, then I can possibly tell you who they are because... Okay, we already know who they are, ma'am. Okay, well, I can tell you, so I used to hang out with them. I could give you any information like their names and stuff, but if you already know who they are, then, you know. Okay. Okay, I just wanted to make sure on that. Okay.
Then Principal Frank DeAngelis was quoted in August 2000 as saying that there really was no trenchcoat mafia, and even if there was, Harris and Klebold didn't associate with the people who wore such clothing, and that there had been no suggestions of plans for an attack like the one launched on 4/20. The TCM was described as a tight-knit group who covered for each other and went out of their way to intimidate other students. According to Kristen Long, there were definite signs that something could happen. She described the Trenchcoat Mafia group as staring you down if they passed you in the hall and you weren't their friend. She stated the group really tried to alienate themselves from others. Adam Kyler reported to investigators that around Christmas 1998, kids in black leather trench coats threatened him, telling him they were going to kill him if he went to class, and if he told anyone about the threats, they would shoot him. Kyler added that the one giving him the trouble was Klebold, but others were present while it occurred. After Adam's mother informed the school administration about it, the harassment from Klebold ceased. CHS class of 2001 and one-time TCM member Alex Marsh said she left the group in about December of '98 because of their propensity for violence. Specifically, Marsh told classmates that she knew of the attack having been planned since at least that time, and was overheard stating that if she hadn't left the group, she probably would have been in on it with them. According to an unnamed individual in the JCSO report, the attack had been the big rumor for 2 years. And Martin Middleton, who had been in the Jefferson County area in the mid-90s, at that time encountered an individual talking about the attempted bombing that would take place on Hitler's 110th birthday, who also told him that the Trenchcoat Mafia which would be attempting it was not just a bunch of lonely depressed kids, but something much larger. Indeed, we were told after the attack that the Columbine attackers had planned to not just shoot and maim a few dozen students, but to kill 500 people, level the school with bombs, hijack a plane from Denver's New World Airport, and, despite their total inexperience with aviation, fly it over 2,000 miles, where they would perhaps lodge it into skyscrapers in New York City, a plan which may have sounded foreign to audiences of 1999, but which today seems all too familiar. Harris, Klebold, Morris, and others, including associates Nathan Dykman, Zach Heckler, Charles Phillips, and Brian Sargent, had worked together at Blackjack Pizza, then owned by Bob Kurgis. Not only at school had there been talk of exacting revenge on individuals who had allegedly been mean to them, but at Blackjack, Harris in particular would routinely speak of this, and of blowing up the school, asking older individuals to buy him guns, and showing people how to make bombs. Klebold, Morris, and he would also regularly give fireworks displays to their co-workers, fireworks forming the basis of many of the bombs used in the attack, construct and detonate dry ice bombs to alleviate boredom, or something, and Harris, on at least one occasion, was sent home for bringing in a pipe bomb, which he stated he had planned to detonate behind the building in a watermelon. After the attack on Columbine, Karen Krasowski, who worked at a business located in the same strip mall as Blackjack, called authorities to report that she had discovered a bag of fireworks left over on the establishment's roof, where Blackjack employees would occasionally congregate. When the ATF claimed it, they also found a 9mm bullet in the grass. It was also reported by James Thornby, a Blackjack co-worker, that after asking Thornby to buy him a gun, Eric Harris did mention, He already had 7 propane tanks and was going to buy 9 more with the check he had just received toward a desired total of 30. Harris stated to Thornby that it was his intention to blow up the school. In the Associate section of the JCSO report, Patrick McDuffie, a former member of the clique, reported on several subjects of the investigation. He gave the following report at about 9:30 p.m. on the night of April 20th. McDuffie described a list of about a dozen teenagers, including Eric Dutroux, Dylan Klebold, Joseph Stair, Charles Phillips, John Beachman, Eric, last name unknown, Eric Harris, Chris Morris, Eric Alt, and Robert Perry. All of the young men on the list were then CHS seniors, recent graduates, dropouts, or expelled. McDuffie stated that he, like Alex Marsh, had left the group because of their desire to commit violence. Each of these names, including Harris's and Klebold's, is accompanied by a list of what drugs the individual uses, what kind of car he drives, what kind of weapons he owns, and how he contributed to the attack. 3 of the individuals, not including Harris, are listed as having built the bombs used in the assault. 4, not including Klebold, are listed as having been at the school. 8 are listed as having assisted with the plans. McDuffie added that up to 8 students total from nearby Chatfield and Bear Creek high schools were also part of the clique, but he did not remember their names. McDuffie went on to say that the group spoke German at meetings and made most of the bombs at the house of someone whose name has been redacted before they tested them in the woods and mountains. A few days later, McDuffie threw his story into reverse and stated that the detailed reports he had given were either speculation or received secondhand. Furthermore, he went on to state that he believed that all 100-odd bombs used in the attack had been made by Harris and Klebold alone in the span of 3 days, exactly what the police had suggested. According to neighbors, there was an afternoon on which Harris and Klebold stayed in Harris's garage, sawing wood and breaking glass, which some alleged to have been the sounds of bomb construction. However, the bombs were mostly made of plastic and metal, and the garage incident only occurred once and was over by 5 o'clock in the afternoon. On his website, Harris posted reports of missions, middle-of-the-night prank runs involving fireworks and toilet paper. These were enacted alongside Zach Heckler and Dylan Klebold. Harris also posted death threats against quasi-TCM member Brooks Brown, which the Browns printed out and took to the Littleton police. Although Klebold and Harris spent time in a juvenile diversion program for having broken into an unattended van and stealing electronics equipment, nothing seems to have arisen from the death threat incident. Shortly after this time, Harris's webpage reverted to its usual function of displaying modules he had created for the video game Doom, which he had created a version of involving Columbine High School and which he said he had become obsessed with. The Harris-Heckler-Klebold trio was also involved in an incident at Columbine which resulted in their out-of-school suspension, this time involving the hacking of the school's computer system for locker combinations, opening a locker, and leaving a threatening message in return for the alleged harassment of one of the TCM girls. Heckler, like Klebold, was also accused of harassing students. Kevin Starkey said that he had had a number of altercations with Heckler. At one time, Starkey's cousin, Devin Cathall, went to Heckler and told him to leave Starkey alone. A short time after the warning from Cathall to Heckler, the front picture window of Starkey's home was shot out, and Starkey believes that Heckler is responsible for the shooting of the window. Despite all of the trouble they got into together, including numerous admitted acts of vandalism and being caught by police stealing several $100s worth of electronics equipment, Harris and Klebold remained, to quote Bob Kurgis, joined at the hip, perhaps literally at certain times, if the reports of reporter Mike Connors are accurate, and were not separated by their parents. Nathan Dykeman was described as Dylan Klebold's best friend, and he denied foreknowledge of the attack to government investigators, after having left Colorado for his father's house in Florida immediately after the attack. When shots rang out at CHS, Dykeman was described as having just left campus, and to the surprise of fleeing students trying to tell him to evacuate, he laughed out loud, declaring, "I'll bet I know who it is, and I can't believe they did it today." According to Dykeman, Harris once took him into his parents' bedroom, where he was shown a pipe bomb, which Harris's parents had confiscated from Eric's room during searches they conducted following his arrest and admittance into the diversion program. This anecdote is strengthened by the report of Sasha Jacobs, who dated Harris for a short time in 1998 and who said that he told her the same. Chris Morris also related likewise. We haven't heard the Harris' side of the story, as they refused to speak to investigators once they learned that they would not be able to work out immunity from prosecution. When government agents reached Harris's parents' house during the attack on April 20th, Kathy Harris's sister was present, along with Kathy and Wayne Harris themselves, and the house reeked of gasoline, which could be smelled even from the street. It was determined that the vapors were present in an explosive concentration, and Wayne Harris did allow himself to mention that the presence of such vapors was not the usual state of the residence's atmosphere. The team executing the search also found a sawed-off shotgun handle, a pipe bomb, and other paraphernalia related to the attack in plain sight in Eric's room. During the juvenile diversion program, Harris wrote about his problem with anger and made a cryptic statement about his belief in violence. For all of the psychobabble the public was subjected to from this or that psychological expert, Harris, a psychiatrist, who had been writing him prescriptions for various psychoactive chemicals, including Zoloft and Luvox, was never put before a microphone. Doctor-patient confidentiality protects the contents of therapy sessions, but is precluded by admissions of plans to commit crimes, and precedent does exist for action to be taken against psychiatrists who knowingly allow their patients to continue despite such confessions. In 1983, for example, Dr. John Hopper was sued to the tune of $14 million by then-Secretary of State Jim Brady and Secret Service agents for having made the mental condition of the son of Bush family business colleague John Hinckley Jr., worse, and failing to heed signals by his patient that he might try a political assassination. According to drug fact sheets and a lawsuit filed by attack survivor Mark Taylor, some of the Luvox's possible side effects are quite adverse, including homicidal and suicidal behavior, along with emotional blunting or a deadening of empathy. During the time that he was ingesting this substance, Harris, who was known to occasionally drink alcohol and smoke marijuana, was even accused by his father of being under the influence of LSD. According to unsourced reports by researcher Brian Desborough, at the age of 10, Harris allegedly used to complain to his friends that he was being drugged at the Plattsburgh Air Force Base where his father worked until its official closure in September 1995. Dylan Klebold had also changed considerably over the summer before his senior year when, as a former friend of his put it, he went to the long hair and everything else. Klebold's parents allowed his descent into strange clothing styles and musical selection, they said, as long as he could articulate his decisions on why he was making the choices he was. His father, Thomas, explained to government investigators that it was his belief that his son being able to do this was part of his becoming an adult. Just because someone could articulate the thought process he or she used to commit heinous acts doesn't validate them, nor does it nullify their need for correction. In addition to school videos featuring Harris and Klebold starring as hitmen hired to protect high school students of low social status, Dylan wrote a story in an English class which caused the teacher to pull him aside, and also to notify his parents and a school counselor. The story featured godlike, heroic assassins murdering the athletes at a high school. Klebold's parents were not concerned, and Klebold himself said that it was just a story. Whereas Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold are apparently no longer among the living, CHS-TCM co-founder Chris Morris reported that he began wearing the trench coat to create an ominous or threatening appearance, and that, in the 1997 to 98 school year, up to 100 students were doing the same. By the following year, the number had dropped to a dozen or so, and Morris himself shed the trench coat while continuing to wear a dark green, black-looking beret as a matter of course. Morris assisted government investigators in attempting to rope Blackjack Pizza employee Phil Duran, who had bought guns for Dylan Klebold, into the government's net by placing a phone call to him from the FBI office in Denver. He was eventually cleared of all suspicion by authorities, and according to his girlfriend, Nicole Markham's mother, considers himself a victim of the attack for the damage it's done to his name. Ashley Egland is one CHS student who named Morris by name as having been a shooter during the attack, but according to Morris, he was off campus playing Nintendo at the house of Corey Friesen. Friesen, a co-founder of the CHS TCM, is the son of CHS chemistry teacher Kent Friesen, who showed his students how to make a potato launcher type of weapon by using explosive chemicals. Morris added to his lab partner during the lesson that it would be easy to convert the device into a pipe bomb with just a few adjustments. TCM co-founder, 1998 CHS graduate, and 2007 suicide Joe Stair, who, despite his statements to police that he had seen the TCM group only once or twice since he left high school, had been asked several times by CHS staff to stay away from the campus since he had already graduated, described Morris as having a severe anger problem. Morris, who knew how to use a variety of weapons, including medieval weapons, had reportedly pulled knives on several people during the years before the attack on Columbine. One of the people he reportedly did not get along with was Robert Perry, another of the reported attackers. On April 11th, Perry began working a graveyard shift in an area supermarket, but did not work on April 19th or 20th. Perry, his family, and neighbor all claimed that at the time of the attack, Perry was at home, asleep, and was awoken by his mother at about 11:30 a.m. to view news broadcasts about it. Perry says that he then got dressed in his black trench coat, smart if true, and went to the school to check on his sister Liddy. This may not have been an unusual occurrence for Perry, who, like Joe Stair, was reported to have spent significant amounts of time on the grounds of CHS following the end of his enrollment there. Many witnesses who described or named Perry as having participated in the attack, and in particular who described his noticeable acne, were goaded by government investigators to, quote, understand that the attacker they had seen was actually Klebold. As stated earlier, Perry somewhat resembled Klebold, but with a longer face, crooked teeth, a noticeable overbite, pigeon-toed gait, and massive zits. Perry was spotted walking from the school in a tie-dyed shirt just following the attack by Suni Hop, who had known him for 6 years and was 100% sure it was he whom she was looking at. And while she was at the nearby public library where some students were being evacuated to, Patricia Stevens had occasion to talk with a CHS student, Brianne Cook, who talked of knowing the two gunmen and also of having seen them at the school with another person. While explaining this, Brianne Cook became noticeably alarmed and pointed to a male standing among the students at the library and identified this individual as the same person she had seen with the two suspects. This individual was described as a white male, 18 to 20, with red, dirty, matted down hair, 6'2", with a slender build, wearing a pink-yellow tie-dyed shirt. He was described as having wild eyes and did not stay at the library. Brooks Brown, a lifelong friend of Klebold and a quasi-member of the Trenchcoat Mafia, was described in the reports by students as tending to lie a lot and having considered himself a master philosopher. He was also considered by at least one CHS teacher, as well as by some police, to have more knowledge about the attack than he was letting on. One piece of knowledge Brown appears to have been uniquely privy to was that Dylan Klebold had acne scars, as he reported to government investigators. Brown was said by a classmate to have been sitting in Eric Harris's assigned seat during 4th hour creative writing class on April 20th, which was said to have been unusual. Brown stated that he ran into Eric Harris outside the building at about 11:10 a.m. on April 20th, the end of Columbine's 4th hour and the beginning of A lunch. This was supposedly Brown's first knowledge of the attack. In December of 1998, Lori Reynolds was in 1st hour choir class with Brooks Brown and 2 other subjects when she overheard Brooks tell Robbie, last name unknown, and Zach, last name unknown, that something big was going to happen on April 20th. And in addition to being a singer with the choir, Brown played in a band. Sometime prior to the attack, he had approached a fellow classmate about designing an album cover for one of his group's recordings. That individual declined, but the final product was a cover depicting Columbine High exploding. Interestingly, Brown was also a part of the production team for the video Scott Fusilier was working on, which depicted the destruction of Columbine High School. Just as none of Harris's vocalizations of the TCM game plan were taken seriously, Brown told the media regarding this video that it was a parody, done in humor. Speaking of things which aren't very funny, in an article titled Columbine 5 Years Later, Brown unveiled Thomas Klebold and himself as the reason why Michael Moore made Bowling for Columbine, an anti-gun propaganda movie which, despite its title, had little to do with details of the attack on CHS. For instance, the title, Bowling for Columbine, implies that Harris and Klebold had gone pleasure bowling on the morning of the attack, when score sheets from that day indicate that they did not attend their 0-hour, preschool day Columbine bowling class at AMF Lanes. Brown, whom reportedly no one at Columbine liked, said, "I was chilling with Tom and Sue," Klebold, who had just served him some strawberry shortcake, and Tom said, "You know who would be great to get out here? Michael Moore. Go on his website, it has his email. I can't do this because our lawyer won't let us, but that would be awesome." I sent Michael Moore an email and said, "I'm this kid from Columbine, you might have seen me on the news. I'd really like to talk to you for a couple of minutes and see if you'd want to come out and do a movie on Columbine." So Tom Klebold's the reason Bowling for Columbine happened. There had been some puzzlement on the part of law enforcement authorities as to how, not the pipe bombs, but some of the larger explosives found after the attack, such as the propane tank bombs, which, if detonated, could have done serious structural damage to the building, got inside the school. Perhaps the green-haired, non-CHS student seen talking to Dylan Klebold at the after-prom party had something to do with it. According to Kathy Pavelainen and Linda Reffel, who were on the party food committee, there was a propane gas tank in the freezer in the school cafeteria with cups sitting on top of it, and an individual with green hair who did not attend CHS and who had no business being there, talking to Klebold. Government investigators said that they were unable to determine the identity of this individual. And in addition to this and other teenagers seen before and during the attack, several witnesses noticed an older man who looked like he was in his 30s and going bald, carrying a sawed-off shotgun outside the science classrooms on 420. You may recall that some thought at first that he was a police officer. When CHS parent, Barbara Karakoussis, dropped her daughter off at school on the morning of April 20th, she observed a group of 5 to 6 white males standing and sitting on the southwest corner of the intersection. She advised that 2 of the males were sitting on what appeared to be large backpacks, and the rest of the males were standing talking with each other. She advised that one of the males who was standing caught her attention because he had short blonde hair and appeared to be older than the others. All the males were dressed in black clothing, and the male who looked older than the others appeared to be in his mid-20s. She advised this male was standing and had a black-colored blanket or coat draped over his left arm. And just prior to the attack on the school, a bomb was exploded in a field some distance away, a diversion tactic common to many acts of terrorism.
You guys had an explosion on Wadsworth and Chatfield. Yeah. And I pulled up on that, and I'm the one that called the explosion in. Okay. There was a guy that came out from underneath, you know that little waterway type thing? Uh-huh. He came out from underneath that, but he seemed to be like, it was really weird because he came out right after the explosion. Okay. Like he was standing there watching it. Okay. Now, I have a description of him, but he was one of the guys wearing. He had a dark blue shirt on, a pair of tan shorts, and a fanny pack, dark brown hair, and a mustache.
While he was talking to government investigators, CHS Class of '98 and TCM member Eric Alt confirmed that the TCM talked about setting bombs around the school and blowing up the school, and that they talked about how it would be fun as a senior prank to ride through the school on dirt bikes with guns and shoot it up. Alt also told them that the group was into satanic worship, and that when the groups got into a fight, the mafia group would chant satanic verses as they walked by the jocks. Whatever Robert McDuffie's impetus for dropping the potato on the CHS TCM in his report, an unnamed individual in the reports called up accounts of a Denver area culture well outside the bounds of humanity. This individual, who attended another high school in the area, related that he had been to parties attended by goths and trenchcoat mafia individuals in their 20s across the area, and that most of the trenchcoat mafia individuals were out of school, and that there were not very many who were still in school. He stated that they were into bloodletting, cutting, and violence. He was also questioned on sexually explicit photographs found in his backpack, which were homosexual in nature, and stated that he had been to the house of an individual known to some in this circuit as Pedophile Bill, a homosexual man who was, quote, not nice sexually, and had given him these pictures and also showed him photo albums which made him sick to his stomach. The albums, he said, contained sexually explicit photographs of small children up to the age of 14. Joe Stair was said by shop classmate Andy Perlman to have carried a book with him which he referred to as the Devil's Bible, and to have mentioned that he worshipped the devil. Stair, along with TCM member Eric Dutroux, were playing a card game in the Columbine cafeteria one day when they got up from their table and began harassing other students by getting in their faces and saying, "Satan loves you." Many students were upset by Dutroux's behavior. Stair and Dutroux then began kissing each other in front of the entire cafeteria. In disgust, Paul Matten went to their table and pushed all of their playing cards to the ground. Later that summer, Matten began receiving death threats on the telephone. He would answer the phone, and an individual would say that he was going to kill Matten. German music was playing in the background. TCM co-founder Tad Bowles explained the trenchcoat phenomenon as that the group just started wearing them to stay warm. Likewise, the term trenchcoat mafia was said to have innocently originated from an outsider who jokingly asked those wearing the coats, "Who do you think you are, the trenchcoat mafia?" As a cultural phenomenon, however, psychotically violent individuals in trenchcoats was not something confined to Littleton, nor to Colorado, despite such claims to the contrary, a fact which makes the reports of TCM associates jumping all over each other in anxiety of being able to prove themselves the first to have worn the coat in Littleton all the more colossal a tragedy. In fact, it had appeared all over America in the mid-1990s, the same time that it happened in Littleton, as almost anyone in their teens or 20s at that time could tell you. This cultural meme, perhaps a grotesque mutation of the often gang-related, juvenile delinquent or bad boy black leather jacket, was pushed in mainstream commercial venues on an international basis. Even then Vice President Al Gore got into the act when he visited Jefferson County for the Columbine Memorial Ceremony. Several of these examples, including The Crow, released in 1994, Blade, 1998, and The Matrix, which debuted just before the attack on CHS, had particularly mystical or occult-themed storylines. Boyd Rice, a founder of the Luciferian group, Ordo Lapsit Exilus, and a magister in the Church of Satan's Council of Nine, declared that such films are indeed evidence of the resurrection of an occult tradition he refers to as the Arcadian mystique. Chris Morris, who was alleged to have reported to a classmate at CHS that he didn't follow God's commandments, but Satan's commandments, and that we were all characters in a video game being controlled by someone else, might have been of the same opinion. The quote-unquote industrial music culture, of which Rice was a part, and which gained significant commercial ground in the 1990s, surrounded, was interwoven with, and reinforced the occult themes of these movies, and with the more mainstream end of which the trenchcoat mafia were well acquainted. This industrial culture movement, and particularly its industrial music component, is said to have been consciously spawned by British performance artist and self-styled social engineer Neil Megson. Megson, who has employed a variety of pseudonyms, has given interviews alongside and as a friend of now-deceased Church of Satan founder Anton LaVey. Like LaVey, Megson also founded an occult organization of his own, known as the Temple of Psychic Youth. Called Topi, the temple is an offshoot of a deconstructionist occult movement known as Chaos Magic, a movement created in the 1970s which has noticeably given rise to the Order of the Illuminates of Thanateros, which takes its name from those of the gods Thanatos, Greek for death, and Eros, a sexual god, sex and death being primary drives of the human psyche. The Illuminates of Thanateros, or IoT, Initiate's Manual, titled Liber Null, declares that its organization is one along a millennia-old lineage, dating back to the earliest shamans, and is dedicated to twisting the unconscious desires of humanity through lies, trickery, and magic, or advanced, and often subtly exercised, psychophysiological manipulation. The aim of this process has been to lead humanity away from our natural, timeless origins along a progression through several ages of an increasingly complex system of money, religion, and professional politics, the proposed end of which is a perpetual age of chaos, an aim bearing remarkable similarities to the dialectical materialism propounded by Marx. The age of chaos is to be a permanent dark age, characterized by the death of what is decent and natural within humanity, and in which occultism and magic are to reign supreme as the dominant mode of interpreting reality. IoT members, and chaos magicians in general, typically include members of other occult organizations, including the Church of Satan and the Temple of Set, the latter of which is a black magical or left-hand path organization based on Egyptian Set worship, Set being the mythological bringer of night, opposing the god Osiris, and a Satan figure in pre-Christian days. This organization was founded by quote-unquote High Setian priest Michael Aquino, a U.S. Army lieutenant colonel and co-author of a 1975 psychological warfare manual titled From Psyop to Mind War, The Psychology of Victory, which displays an egregiously warped view of the nature of truth. Aquino and his wife, who went by the name of Lilith, were accused in 1987 of sexually abusing 3-year-old boys and girls in daycare programs at the U.S. Army's Presidio, a practice perhaps not that uncommon if articles like Dave McGowan's The Pedopocracy are accurate. Several TCM members and affiliates also recall use of the term FNORD in computer screen names and classroom writings. FNORD is a reference to the writings of now-deceased Golden Dawn initiate Robert Anton Wilson, who wrote of a psychological war between occult factions attempting to control the minds of humanity in his trilogy, Illuminatus. Wilson was a close associate of Peter Carroll, the wealthy real estate investor who co-founded the IoT and who has written many of the works fundamental to chaos magic. Carroll still teaches courses at Wilson's online Maybe Logic Academy. Many Christians discuss the occult, including Freemasonry, but do so from a religious standpoint and are not objective about what they are discussing. This is because religion itself is a watered-down version of the occult, given to the public to soothe their anxieties about the path to hell on earth the occult masters are prodding humanity along. Many less spiritually oriented people are likely to attempt to deny the influence of occultism in our lives, or ignorantly label it harmless, but as the aim of occultism is worldly power and the fulfillment of desire, occultists are not just mentally disturbed, black nail-polished teenagers listening to heavy metal, but highly ambitious, highly intelligent, black-tied adults found among the upper echelons of the hierarchy of civilization, wielding political influence, financial wealth, and social status. The seal of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, a popular sect of the craft as it's known, bears the slogan Ordo ab Chao, Latin for Order from Chaos, a popular concept among magical orders and the psychopathic personality types they attract. The natural world, including natural humanity, is full of complexity and beauty on its own, but sometimes our vision of this becomes clouded with doubt, as is encouraged by LaVey's Satanic Bible, and the idea of superimposing artificial order upon it appears more appealing or even necessary. This process and consequent loss of the soul can be expedited by violent traumatic events like child abuse or armed attacks on high schools. The attack on Columbine was not the first, nor the last of such events. In the run-up to 1999, May 21, 1998 was a particularly busy day, as it saw 4 such gun-related events in schools across America in the span of an afternoon, and the 2007 attack on Virginia Tech had a body count of 33. Politically, following almost every one of these incidents, and particularly following the attack on Columbine, there is a concerted effort put on in an attempt to use the chaos created by the violence in order to create support for legislation to disarm Americans, as was successfully accomplished in Ireland following the Dunblane kindergarten shooting, and in Australia following a shooting in Port Arthur. The push from medical industrial authorities to medicate and psychiatrically monitor young people also took an aggressive turn following the attack, even though it is possible that the Luvox Harris was taking, like the Zoloft he took before that, played a significant part in greasing the skids of his madness and thus enabling his participation in the assault. We are also told that draconian punishments, an increased and more heavily militarized police presence, and increased technologically based surveillance and identification systems are the solution to the troubles of society, which unimaginative politicians from all parties seem all too eager to advance upon us, whether we ask for them or not. One might wonder whom they really serve.
I'm on hold for the president.
Hello?
Hello.
Ms. Holloway?
Yes.
It's President Clinton. I just called to tell you I was thinking about you.
Well, thank you very much.
I'm so sorry.
Well, this has been a terrible tragedy.
Oh, my God. Well, the whole country's watching it with you, and I'm so sorry you're going through it. If there's anything we can do to help, we will. And
Well, actually, hopefully, even though this is a terrible tragedy, maybe we can turn this into the very last one to ever happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
I hope we can, too. You know, one of the problems we faced after we had all those school shootings last year, none of which were this bad.
No.
We put out, I got the Justice Department and the Education Department, we worked really hard on this handbook for trying to prevent this stuff. And I just got a call from Congresswoman Carolyn McCarthy from New York, whose husband was gunned down on a Long Island commuter train a couple of years ago, and she said that her foundation has been in touch with so many schools were saying, well, this couldn't happen here. So I think now, you know, it may shake everybody so much that maybe it will be a lasting one.
I think when they get out here and they see this area, they will say this is the last place they ever would have thought about it. And
I spent the night in Littleton before. I know it well.
Yeah, it is. It's just, you know, it's one of those wonderful little communities.
Oh, it's fabulous. One of my best friends lives there, and so I know it very well.
Yeah, we're still in shock. And have you heard the data on this?
No, how many finally?
Well, we've got at least 20 in the local hospitals, and they have been in the school, and there are probably at least 25 dead.
Yeah.
This is, it's just unbelievable.
One of the things that we found, I knew a lot of the people that were involved in the Arkansas deal because it was my home, and of course I was involved in a lot of these other schools too. And one of the things that we found is the more counselors you can get in there, the quicker to deal with the kids, the better off it is, because a lot of them are going to have real problems.
Yes, we've seen them just, I mean, of course we know how we are. We're all shook up. I mean, this thing is just unbelievable. Those poor kids that were held in there, some of them were held in there for a long time before they could be rescued to get out.
And you're going to have a lot of kids that knew those two boys who heard them say things. They're going to feel guilty. They're going to wonder if they said something or done something where others be alive, and it's just going to be a horrible mess. We've got a lot of people in this crisis response team. If we could send you any of those people, you let us know. We'll all, our people will be in touch with you. Anything you can do to help. But I think that one thing I learned in these 4 or 5 terrible incidents we had last year is that the more of these kids you can convince to talk to somebody more quickly, people that are trained to deal with them, the more you will minimize their long-term trauma.
Well, great. I appreciate that, because we've got quite a few on way. Well, in fact, we've got some down there. We've got others who are on their way to help. And, it's organized chaos right now. And, but we appreciate it. We would really be happy to work with you to see if maybe we can't stop this, if we can find what is wrong in our country.